All right, folks, welcome back to the channel. You found us here, KGB Customs, home of what we believe is some of the best custom gun content on the web. We share these custom guns in hopes of sharing some knowledge and to catalog some of the great pieces that come through our shop. Thanks for joining us. If you guys aren't already, subscribe to the channel, like the video. If you didn't like the video, move on, find something else to watch. If you do like the stuff we present here, jump down to the link in the description and sign up for our email list. We don't spam it. We don't send a bunch of emails every day. One or two a week. Whenever we get new stuff in, new stuff goes on the website, an email goes out to those on the list. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a gun that is very, very special in my eyes. In my opinion, one of the biggest smiths that very few people have heard of. Everyone's heard of Pachmayr Custom Shop. Not a lot of people, other than those of us who really live and breathe this stuff, have heard of Craig Wetstein. Craig Wetstein is a name, as I said, not many know, but you should if you're into custom 1911s. He was one of the key pistol smiths behind building the vaunted Pachmayr Combat Special. Craig started working at Pachmayr in '76 under Tom Dornhouse, and Tom really helped him refine his pistol smithing skills. Craig had gone to gunsmithing school and got his first job right out of school with Pachmayr. Tom eventually would leave Pachmayr to start the Bren 10 project, and Craig became the main man lead pistol smith at Pachmayr's very busy pistol smithing shop in the late 70s. Pachmayr was years out on combat specials at that point, and eventually Craig would also leave and start his own shop in the early 80s. That shop was called Auto Shop, like 45 Auto, and that was in Culver City, California. Not a big move from the Pachmayr shop. Distance-wise, he would continue to build the combat-centric type pistols. As you can see here, this pistol has many of the features you'd expect to see on a Pachmayr Combat Special from the early 80s, and some features that would be unique. Now again, the Combat Special came in many forms. We see two-tones, full chrome guns. You see many with round guards that are checkered on the front, some with squared guards, some have no front strap checkering, some do. Many had Bomar adjustable rear sights, some didn't. We even see some with micro rear sights, etc., etc. The feature set was wide, but there was a basic outline to a Pachmayr Combat Special, and that was an outline that Craig carried with him throughout his career. A little quote from Craig here. I came to work for Tom Dornhouse in 1976 at Pachmayr Gunworks. He taught me everything about working on 1911s. He was an excellent teacher and a great guy. When he left Pachmayr to develop the Bren 10, I was left in charge of the 45 shop. I built on his teachings and developed my own style, which I carried over eventually to my own shop in the 80s, the Auto Shop in Culver City, California, which I eventually closed in 1986. And he closed it partly due to legislation in the area and also arthritis in his hands. Much of the work he did on these guns was hand work, and that eventually caught up with him. I reached out to Craig. Craig's a friend of mine. I consider him a very important person. He worked behind the curtain of Pachmayr for many years. I reached out to Craig and I showed him this gun, and he was very excited to see it and to know that, you know, people were still interested in his work all these years later. And I asked him, I said, so you are the guy who actually built Ross Seaford's combat specials. Ross Seaford, of course, famous IPSC shooter and champion, won that title with a Pachmayr Combat Special, which really catapulted the popularity of the Pachmayr Combat Special. And without knowing it, Craig's work. And Craig said to me, he said, yes, I also built Chapmans, Coopers, Hackathorns, and Askins, and many, many others I can't remember. I built Seaford a pair. So the gentleman he's talking about there is Ken Hackathorn, Charles Askins, Ross Seaford, Ray Chapman, and Jeff Cooper. If you know anything about IPSC shooting, combat shooting in the 80s, those names all mean something to you in the 70s and 80s. Ken Hackathorn, of course, is still with us. Many of these guys are not. Pretty sure Ross is still alive. Jeff is gone. But these guys created the Southwest Combat Pistol League. And at least two of those guys, to my knowledge, were IPSC champions. Ross, of course, winning it with a Pachmayr that Craig built. Craig also went on to say in our conversation, he said, I just thought of something. None of these guys knew who I was. And what he means by that is, I have some letters here from Colonel Charles Askins relaying the news about Ross Seaford winning with a Pachmayr. And these letters are all addressed to Frank Pachmayr. So that, that I think jogged in Craig's memory that these guys didn't know who he was. And maybe Frank didn't give him the credit or put him in front of these guys as the man behind the curtain that was doing the work. I'll go ahead and read those letters to you because I think they're terribly interesting and showed kind of how cheeky, I guess, Charles Askins was. The first one dated 30 October 1978. My dear Frank, the old kid who won the recent National Combat Pistol Championships was Ross Seaford. And then he goes on to say where Seaford was from. He shot a Pachmayr 45 all the way. I think it would be a fine thing if you had time to write to him. I talked to him on the phone, and his statement that he shot your gun with Bomar sights comes right from the horse's mouth. This hombre is a Colorado cowboy. He punches cows on his old man's rancho. I'm sorry to tell you that somewhere amongst the board of directors of the NRA is some sentiment against this fine new pistol game, meaning combat pistol shooting. There are some of the old FUDs, which might be the first recorded usage of FUD in the gun business. There are some old FUDs who are just sure this kind of shooting gets the gunner ready to kill someone. What a crock of shit. You may be sure this doesn't emanate from Harlan Carter. He has been a gun toter all his life, but undoubtedly among some of the more elderly types here. There is some of this sentiment which we must combat. How is my pistol coming along? So he's inquiring about his combat special. I'm going to Iran right away, and in view of the current situation over there, I may need to shoot a Persian rug merchant or two. Give Nanita my regards with all the best wishes to you and Stevie. Cordially, Colonel Askins. So you can tell that Colonel Askins is a brash individual and a jokester. He makes some jokes in there, some of them a little off color, but nonetheless. So we have the second letter dated 7 November 1978. So just like a week later, I imagine looking at these dates and the content of the letters that they had already sent Colonel Askins his gun, or did the day they got this letter, because the fact that he's writing the letter thanking them for the gun here in this second letter. Dear Frank, this handsome pistol arrived yesterday. I am delighted with it. It is a far cry from the hardballer I shipped you, which means GI pistol. I'll tell you that this is as fine a model in 1911 as I could ever want. It is finished exactly the way I hoped you would work it over and has all the refinements I like in a combat pistol. I just got it yesterday and haven't had a chance to fire it yet, but I'll get to this business probably tomorrow. I'll tell you how it shoots. It was thoughtful on the part of someone in your shop to include an extra recoil spring and spring guide. Just between us girls, I like to shoot wad cutters more than full charge in my 45 autos. Someone must have known this, for the extra spring and guide rod were included. Many thanks. I really like this one, old stud. I have been in touch with the new National Combat Pistol Champion. I have sent you 2 photos of him. I thought you ought to have these because the lad is a user of your pistol. Just for your info, his win means more than any of these other world champions. The course of fire he fired is tougher, and the class of competitor much more highly trained. This boy is truly a national champ. I have also included a photo of some old bastard who was wandering around at the matches, pinching all the gals on the ass and shooting the blooms off the yucca cactus. If you should happen to run onto him, I'd appreciate it if you will pass this pic along to him. I am really overwhelmed with this new gun, old kid. Many thanks, Colonel Askins. I'm not sure who he's referencing in that last line about some old guy wandering around pinching all the gals. I wish I knew, but I imagine it was one of their friends and they knew who they were talking about. So on to this pistol. That's kind of the background of Craig and how it goes for a lot of good gunsmiths who work for another shop. Maybe they don't get the recognition they deserve, but I'm making this long-winded video to make sure Craig gets that recognition, because his work really stood on a different pedestal and was on a different level than a lot of the work being done in the late 70s and 80s. So this gun has an MMC front sight, commonly used on Pachmayr combat specials. Has a beveled, chamfered, softened up, I think King's rear sight. The top of the slide is gently matted, very, very softly matted. A French border is machined on there. We've got a micro match bushing. Micro bushings were Craig's favorite throughout his career at Pachmayr and beyond. We've got a Pachmayr beaver tail here. Arguably, these were all custom made, the ones used in actual Pachmayrs and by Craig. You can see just a hint of porosity in the back, like it's all welded up and custom made. We've got an Armand Swenson single-sided thumb safety, nicely softened. Of course, the slide stop nicely softened. The trigger face is unique. It's rounded left to right and dead smooth, so no serrations. I imagine that was something he was asked to do on this gun. The Commander hammer has been narrowed to eliminate any rubbing on the slide and to lighten it up, and the hole chamfered deeply. If you go look at any of my guns, you'll notice this is the look I'm going after. Of course, this one's hard chromed. The face of that hammer is mirror polished. This was a feature you'd see on Pachmayr combat specials from the era in which Craig was building them. Also, inside the gun, the springs, so the recoil spring and the hammer spring, were often mirror polished. He would put them on a mandrel and take them to the buffing wheel and polish them up. The spring guide, the recoil spring guide, is mirror polished. The underside of the slide is mirror polished. Just really peerless work. The barrel ramp is mirror polished. This features the original Colt barrel that's been welded up and refit, which gives you a fully accurized gun at this point with the micro bushing. Frame to slide was tightened by the peening method, which was common practice in the day. The magwell has been opened up just as wide as you can get it without adding any extra material there. Front strap checkered 20 LPI, nice raised pattern, similar to how he did them at Pachmayr. I have Craig's tools. Whatever he had left when he retired, he was gracious enough to sell to me, and I wanted to show you guys this punch. This punch says Auto Shop Culver City, and that's what these guns are marked under the serial number. This punch marked this frame 45 years ago, and that it's an honor to get to hold this piece of steel and own it, and it's a huge honor to put these two pieces of metal back together. I have, a handful of Craig's checkering files and his other custom safe-edged files, and all the, as you work as a gunsmith, you grind down files and customize them to fit in different nooks and crannies, and I've got a whole shoebox full of that stuff, along with a Culver City Police Department patch that I'm sure he was given by a customer, and various fixtures and baubles from his shop, some of which I honestly don't even know what they're good for, and Craig doesn't remember either. They were probably made to do one specific holding job on one specific gun, and then they went in the drawer. Oftentimes we'll make fixtures and stuff that don't have a lot of use beyond the job we're doing today. But in those tools, there's his trigger guard squaring tool, which belongs in a museum as far as I'm concerned. And it's just an honor that Craig thought enough of me to offer to sell me those tools. And I hope you guys enjoyed this gun. As you can tell, I'm fairly passionate about it. The fact is, he was one of the best pistol smiths of the late 70s through the 80s. And built the pinnacle, we'll call it, the Pachmayr Combat Special. The best combat specials were arguably made during his tenure there, and certainly the ones we all think of. You know, we all think of Seaford's gun and Chapman's gun when we think of combat specials. And Craig was the man behind the curtain that did all that. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, if you're into this kind of stuff, jump down and join our email list and see what else we got moving through here. Thanks for tuning in.